Awesome. Welcome, everybody, to this another wonderful episode of the Being Unstoppable and Sovereign podcast. We are here together, Jocelyn Afnedidansky and my beautiful friend, Jan Williams. Hey, sister.
Hi.
So we're looking forward to this episode. This is a wonderful topic that Jan come up with, and it's something that's close to my heart as well. So I'll hand the time over to Jan to introduce the topic, and then we'll get into it. If you have any questions or any concerns or any comments, please comment down below and let us know about your personal stories, or if you want to private message either Jan or myself, feel free to do that. We'll be happy to get back to you within 24 hours. We're also busy mummies with our children as well. So give us that time and we'll be happy to do that. Follow us on all social media. We will follow you back as well. And of course, join in the conversation. We're doing this so that we can assist and help those of you who want to be unstoppable, who want to be sovereign, who want to have and live the life that you want, through whatever avenue you believe is imperative to you to be able to do that. So I'll hand the timer. This is episode number 4. Episode number 4.
We're on the same page.
Yeah.
So the topic for tonight is connection. It's just been a big, I guess, it's been very relevant for me this week for various circumstances and situations, and I think it's just really part of the building blocks of being sovereign, and it affects how we are in the world and interact with everyone.
Yeah,
and kind
Absolutely.
of just builds on from how we spoke about boundaries the last time, and those boundaries can inform how we connect with people, and whether we're doing it in a, I guess, healthy way versus a potentially unhealthy way.
Yeah,
and where that can lead us.
Yes, absolutely, and what it can cost us.
Yes.
There are consequences to any decision we make, but particularly in terms of our connections and who we connect with, or what we're connecting with and how we're connecting, that can cost big time. Sometimes days, weeks, months, sometimes years, sometimes decades.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't get to understand or know or even realize how different their life could have been or would have been had they not had or had not been able to understand the power of the connection they were in, and the force that comes behind that. So goody, let's get into it. So the first principle, not a principle per se, more so a key thing that happens in connection is trauma, and how it impacts and influences connection.
Yeah, definitely. Excuse me. Especially good old childhood trauma, and is that making us want to people please and kind of abandon ourselves and what we want in that connection that we're striving to maintain, build, or is it just the fact that perhaps we're not able to connect with someone as deeply as we'd like to because we've got those barriers up from that childhood trauma that we're still carrying.
Yeah, absolutely. So trauma, the definition of trauma is fragmentation that happens on the psychological level, but it is subjective to the person, and it's something that happens, which is quite significant, that it creates an experience with that person who then is, because it's subjective, it impacts them and influences them in a number of ways. There's three types of trauma: acute, complex, or chronic. And acute is where I worked in the trauma industry and, emergency. I would work with a lot of people who had acute trauma, but I would also work with a lot of patients who had chronic. Because of the impact of the initial trauma, they would have chronic problems over a length of time, sometimes irreversible over their lifetime. And then complex trauma, which is multiple traumas over a lifespan. And it can be the same type of trauma that is experienced by the person, which then just culminates, or it can be different significant traumas that also then culminates. And so it's like this stack of all these traumas in a lifetime that hasn't been expressed, that hasn't been let out, it hasn't been given a force field or way to be to be witnessed, that it then breaks down in the body and it builds blocks in the body, emotional blocks, stagnant energy that can, if not expressed, crystallize in the body and cause all sorts of tumors and all of that sort of stuff. But also stops someone from being able to, because they've got this thick, massive trauma, connect. And that's what me and Jan wanted to talk about today. So yes, childhood trauma, most of any person's blueprint on life and how to connect in relationships is between the imprint ages 0 to 7. It's your first, even in birth, even before you're conceived sometimes. I had the opportunity of timeline therapy, and I remembered back into when I was in the womb and then when I was conceived, and what was happening in my mother's body as I was being conceived and before she was having me, before she was like bringing me into this world. And I was an accident. Like, I wasn't meant to be here, because if she had known she was pregnant, she would have got an abortion. And so that narrative around my story and how I've come to be here was an unknown when I was little. But as we've done lots of work, it's become something that my body was able to tell me, not my mother or anyone else. So the stories that we have sometimes from trauma can trigger us. It comes from the body. And if we haven't been taught how the skill of returning to the body and listening to the body's wisdom and being able to acknowledge what the body is actually telling us, as opposed to going into freak out mode. Who's been there? Freak out. Then it's just a really great tool to know and to understand when you are, something is of yourself, which 99.9% is your stuff, so that you don't need to project that on other people. Although people will come and enter into our lives to what? To bring in and to show us, mirror to us, to show our blind spots and to trigger us so that we can see those blind spots. Oh, isn't it joyous? Lovely.
Granted, it doesn't always feel joyous at the time when you're triggered the heck out, but
I was
worth
joking.
it in the end. That I know. That's part of what I love about different tools like breath work to help people gain that experience in the body of releasing what they're holding in their body. That to me is just so powerful, the power of our breath, and also other modalities, like Reiki and NLP and all of that. But really, as you say, it has to start with that person gaining some self-awareness to know that that's what they need to do, and being open to that work.
Yeah, and having the support. So and the
Absolutely.
right kind of support.
Yeah.
So that's a powerful look into trauma and what trauma can and how it can impact you in the childhood trauma. And also, I just want to share, like, every 7 years we go through a cycle. So 0 to 7 is the imprint age, and then from 8 to 14 is another 7 years. We go through another set of imprint, but we're more looking at how to, what do I believe, what do I take on, and what do I not? And you sort of start to be in your rebellious years, questioning everything, and then it's not until you go to 15 to 20, was it 21, that you start to question and really reinforce your independence in those years, and then 22 to 27. So with those 7-year cycles, they can either perpetuate and recycle the initial trauma from 0 to 7. Say, for example, my dad didn't tell me he loved me when I was crying, didn't pick me up and cuddle me. And so therefore I have this abandonment wound, which happened when I was 3. And then in the next 7 years, I have another experience. My friend rejects me. It feels like the same wound. It's what happened when my dad abandoned me. So therefore I've got this other trauma, and then it plays out in relationships and so forth. And so we have a responsibility, I guess, to get to the root cause of the first initial trauma, which can then transcend all the other ones, instead of like every single like
individual trauma going
individual
back.
trauma.
Just actually go back to the beginning, as you say.
Yeah. So those triggers, tell me about those triggers, Jan.
Wow. I mean, definitely, and it's part of what I love about timeline work and, inner child discussions with people, because, as you say, a majority of them do tend to originate in those first 7 years. Are we talking triggers of mine specifically, or
Oh no, just triggers in general. We're going to go to the next part, triggers.
I guess the important thing I've learned about triggers is that they're a really great opportunity to deal with some of your shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it generally doesn't feel like that when you're being triggered or have been, and you're trying to process and work out why you're feeling that way. But I think once you can get into that practice of going, that didn't feel so good, what's that about, and then learning to kind of look at the underlying emotions, then you can sort of start to understand, why am I reacting like that to that person, or to that word, or that sound, or whatever it is that's taken your body back to that memory. I think that ends up being a powerful practice for someone to, on their healing journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I definitely see it as a blessing, triggers. There was a point in my life where I didn't. I thought they were bad. And I thought there was something wrong with me.
To me? Yeah.
Why is this happening? I'm a good person. I love people. Why can't people treat me how I treat them? That was a lovely story. The other story I used to tell myself in those moments when being triggered was, doesn't matter what I do, nothing's ever good enough. I can do all of this. And then, I don't know what that's in my pity party victimhood mindset. When you're feeling like triggered, You can easily
Yeah.
fall into that, I think. But what I've learned, the most powerful thing and or lesson I would have learned was from Tony Robbins himself, when he said, if you're going through hell, just keep fucking going. Don't stop. No one in hell goes, oh my gosh, I've arrived at hell, I'm just going to stop, feel sorry for myself and stay there. It's burning, it's blazing, just get the F out of there and keep going. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's swearing. And the other part was like, I didn't know you could just keep going through hell. So don't stop, just keep going. The confusion and frustration is it's a gift. When you're feeling frustrated, when you're feeling confused, it's a gift, because you're about to have a massive breakthrough. So for those 2-3 things, I've always remembered that. That was 2015. And so anytime I feel like, oh, I don't like this, I'm about to have a breakthrough. I'm about to have either a breakdown first, might have a couple of breakdowns before you get the breakthrough, or the lesson, or the outcome that you needed to see without being able to see it clearly at first, because it feels like crap, like shit. But that's an important mindset tool to have, that when you are triggered, ask yourself, really, as a coach, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a healer, what is this teaching me? What is this bringing? What truth is this bringing me closer to? Rather than the feelings of feeling abandoned and rejected and like everyone's out to get you. What is this bringing? What truth is this bringing me closer to? So it's valuable.
I like that. What truth is this bringing me closer to? Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, awesome. And then another goodie in this trauma aspect is the relationship experiences. And to be fair, our first blueprint of relationships is our parents. Or even if we don't have a parent, if we have the mum but not the dad, or we have the dad but not the mum, or we were raised with our grandparents, or we were adopted or fostered out, whoever raised us in that 0 to 7, that's our relationship blueprint of how to connect healthily or unhealthily. And so we can pick up a lot of unconscious information that gets programmed, and then we filter that throughout the rest of our life. And one thing I'd like to share is, in my family system, there's a lot of love. We love, we always cuddle. That's something that other families like, I notice that you all cuddle and you always say, I love you, but we say that all the time. And so for us, it's just normal. And that is just how we've always been. And that was how we were raised. But outside of that, when you realize that, there's some dysfunction, there's some stuff that needs to be talked about, there's some probably not going to impress a lot of people when you bring up, any type of abuse that went under the radar. That love can be, but I still love you. That love can become a manipulative tool, because in order to stay and belong, because there's 3 types of love we need: love from ourselves, love from others, and the sense of belonging. And if we don't belong to our tribe who we grew up with, then you can feel that rejection and that abandonment. And so if we bring up what has happened from childhood, then we can also be isolated from that tribe. And the word love then can be utilized to be a manipulative tool to keep people quiet, to silence people, to keep people the same and not to move out of that said system, or to go against the grain, all of that sort of stuff. So I noticed a nuance with that. I don't know if there's any with you in terms of the family dynamics and the family blueprints in terms of connecting.
Yeah, absolutely. Very much so, in terms of looking back as to how that dynamic has affected how I was. And people may not believe this now, but you pretty much didn't know I was in the room for the first probably 12 years of my life. Very quiet, very, very tight circle of friends at school. Pretty much the epitome of quiet as a church mouse. Didn't try and bring attention or draw focus to myself, because that was just a learned behavior of, flying under the radar and keeping, just not getting caught up in things or noticed in some ways. And then I pretty much hit actually 14 when it came to a head that I started like voicing different things to varying degrees of receptiveness. Shall we say?
Yeah.
And answering back and things like that. And what helped bring me out of my shell, I think, was that I actually I'm actually classically trained in terms of violin and things like that. And I started performing in the school orchestra and different sort of, avenues like that. And I think that it turned on that performance switch in me. And with that came some confidence. And so that kind of started other things happening, and just being a bit of a nerd and reading lots of things and different outlooks, and just having my mind and horizons broadened through some of the books I was reading, just sort of started to organically change me as to how I was then showing up in the world, even though I didn't even know that phrase at the time. And then that kind of led to me actually going, hang on, I do have a voice, I have an opinion. I'm not, I'm not good at just regurgitating those opinions that people around me wanted me to have. And of course I started questioning, and then that came that kind of friction that always comes with someone questioning the the parents, the figures in authority, the whole bit. But I was thinking about it the other day that I wish I could remember the gentleman's name. He came to speak to us, I think my final year of high school, and we talked into things about, basically he was talking about how if we don't deal, with our trauma, with our psychological, whatever has impacted us on a psychological level, and we withhold it, and we repress it and suppress it, then it shows up in the body. It can become dis-ease, illness, as you mentioned earlier, the whole 9 yards. Because I remember him using the phrase something to the effect of, illness is just a physical manifestation of a psychological state. And I just remember looking at him and going, oh my God, light bulb moment, who are you? Kind of thing,
Yeah, absolutely. I love that for Karo. And I, because a couple of years ago I got really, really sick and couldn't walk. And I wondered why my body was starting to give up on me. I had like I'm a nurse and I've been in the healthcare industry for for 27 years. But why am I all of a sudden, it's like I'm in this old lady's body and it's just breaking away? And I had autoimmune disorder, thyroid, I had polyps, just all this stuff. And even knowing what I knew, there was this part in me that hadn't acknowledged the sexual abuse. And it wasn't until I was 36 that my body witnessed it for the first time. And after that, just everything went to custard, or so it would have seemed, and that's how it felt for me. So ended up having to resign from my position. I was in the worst environment you could imagine. And so it was this, I guess, like, it felt like a really bad time, but it was one of the most beautiful times of my life because I learned more about trauma. I literally had to save my life. And exactly what he says, exactly what Louise Hay says, Ina Segal, there's so many out there that your body will witness to you what you don't acknowledge, and your soul speaks to you through your body. So if you don't get it through the feather or the rock or the Big Mac truck or the Empire State Building, then you're going to get it through going to hospital.
All of them at once. Yeah.
And I'll be like, there you go. You can't deny it anymore. You can't hide from it. So you have to deal with it. And the easy route is to, like our episode before last week, we talked about health and how that impacts you, is to listen to a doctor and a specialist, diagnose you with all these issues, but you really do know where those come from. And it could have been lack of self-love. It could have been, just not acknowledging your emotions and suppressing and repressing. And so that's a beautiful awareness to share, and I wished I had a teacher like that.
Yeah, I wish I could remember his name. He was a guest speaker that came and spoke to the senior schools, or the senior school, and I just remember thinking, wow, I need more than an hour with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So our next topic, attachment.
Good old building from connection, isn't it? And our learned blueprints.
Yes, and
so many factors. Yeah.
And also how it's important with attachment. We're not going to go too deep into that because that's for another podcast, but how we attach to people when we're connecting with them. And there's like 3 things that come up for me just like randomly now with attachment is how you perceive that person in your life and how you are willing to commit or dedicate yourself to that person. And then getting clarity around that, because many times in my life I have had, and I believe I had a secure attachment, but in a relationship that's quite, I guess it's a great learning type of relationship. There were other attachments that come up through that. Dismissive avoidant to be one of them, but how you attach to people can impact your connection with yourself. What I mean by that is, have you ever seen someone who you've wanted to maybe connect with and or be in a relationship with, or willing to give it a go, and knowing full well, I'm speaking about myself, this is really about my own history, that person probably isn't not the right soulmate connection, twin flame, I'm not talking about that, but the right one to put all your eggs in one basket and invest in. Because I did see red flags before even making this commitment that was really a commitment by words, by what they said they were going to do, rather than by the actions that they showed, which were incongruent with the words.
Right.
So what I'm trying to get at is, have you ever, with attachment, based on your own childhood blueprint and the way you connect with yourself and other people, have you ever attached to someone who you just knew was not the one?
Absolutely. And probably my first actual relationship, I was, what was I, 19, 20, somewhere around there, I think 20. And I remember probably about I think it was only a couple of months in, and I just remembered thinking, this is okay, but it's not like, I'm just not sure if this is kind of, worth continuing. And the person was going away for a few weeks, and I'd kind of said to myself, but well, it's going away for a few weeks on like inter-semester break or whatever it was, because we were at uni, and I'll just sort of take that time to work out whether I'm, what kind of talk we're going to have when he gets back to town. But then from that, I guess the blueprint of growing up with, like, you just work at it, you keep it going, you give and take, even though one was giving more than the other, and one was taking more than the other. I essentially talked myself into staying in the relationship because I didn't really have enough of a reference point other than what I'd grown up with to stick to my decision of, no, this isn't working for me. It's like, it wasn't any, like, he was a nice person. We got along very well. There was chemistry. It just wasn't like, it had almost felt, I don't know what was missing, but there was a part of the puzzle there that wasn't coming together for me. But I stayed in that relationship for about a year, because I thought, oh, well, maybe this is what, relationships go through. There's ups and downs, and so you have to work at it, kind of thing. That's how I rationalized it to myself. And then it got to a point where I was just like, yeah, I don't see myself growing, because I noticed that I'd actually become attracted to someone else. And when I'm very much an all or nothing kind of girl. And if I'm with someone, there is no one else in my peripheral. There might be someone that walks past that I go, oh, that's a very attractive person, or whatever, but there's no second thought, there's no second look. That's just it, because when I'm with someone, I'm with that person, end of. Yeah. So when I realized that I was actually quite interested in someone else, I was like, oh, we're going to have a conversation, and I did. It was, so that was a hell of a first relationship learning curve, I guess. And yeah, he was my first boyfriend. I'd liked a couple of people in high school. It wasn't reciprocated, so it was like, yeah, had that, kind of thing. And then after him, I had a bit of a knack of, falling for a couple of people that ended up being emotionally unavailable, and had sort of like, intimacy, didn't know how to be emotionally intimate. Yeah, that's probably the most accurate way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that also tied into me. Women tend to be really good at seeing the potential in someone. And sometimes,
no, don't do that. Don't see the potential.
But it's almost like, and then there ends up being that gap between where they actually are and where you kind of can see
where they could go.
And I don't think it was even it wasn't even a conscious of like, oh, I'm just going to stick with you until you're up there. It wasn't even that. It was more like I just saw them up on that level, and then learned, oh, actually no, you're not quite, your human's not quite there yet. And kind of had to just, pull the plug, or I did have, I've had a few boyfriends that have cheated on me as a way of them ending the relationship rather than having a difficult conversation, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's probably, so it's like, well, that's one way to do it.
that's one way to,
that's one way to avoid having like addressing and speaking into feelings, isn't it? To just create a whole nother situation that you can just go, okay, well, I've done that, and let's
and that comes down to attachments too, in terms of recreating a new cycle while not fully ending another cycle, and then the mayhem that ensues for both parties because there's no full closure. And not that there really needs to be closure, or, because some people, and this is another tangent, stay with someone who's cheated, and do the work necessary, which can take months, weeks, years, to get to the point where there's full trust again. What's your thoughts on that one?
Oh, see, my knee-jerk reaction is that infidelity is a deal breaker to me. That's an immediate, do not pass go directly to jail. Hasta la vista, baby.
Yeah.
That's my knee-jerk reaction, and generally probably 9 times out of 10. My 1 time out of 10 that I made an exception. There was one ex that he was unfaithful, but in that particular relationship at that time, I was willing to try. There was, quite a cooling off period of trying to sort of reestablish that sort of, I guess, that level of intimacy with just in terms of how we were connecting and communicating and just being in each other's presence. But then it didn't work out. He decided he wanted something else, and it was like, well, okay, can't really, that's it then. But generally it was up until him, and I'm not even sure what it was, if there's necessarily anything particular to him that made me want to try, or whether it was just I was just so sort of potentially infatuated with him that I was willing to, to try, as opposed to a partner before him that I'd found out that he'd cheated, and it was like, the equivalent of block, delete, don't come near me again, don't write, don't text, don't call, don't show up at my house, we're done.
Yeah, I hear you, sister. I have I guess for me, obviously I've experienced that cheating, and I guess when I look at it from taking responsibility, because I always try to see both sides. This is like the personality disorder I have. I always try to see the other person's side, even when they've harmed me, or I believe they've harmed me or wronged me in some way. I always try and see, okay, so what happened here? What was your responsibility? What could you be take full ownership for?
I'm going to say, do you look for your potential, your part in that?
Always.
Situation always. As such, which is part of self-responsibility, absolutely. But then also, disclaimer, some people are just a-holes.
always there's lots of mofos out there. And I can be one of them, let's be honest. I can be a mofo myself. But for me, when I had probably my recent experience that happened, and it was emotional cheating, really, before the actual cheating. And I've got to say, the emotional cheating for me was worse, and it happened like a year before the actual cheating that I know of. Because it was like the stepping out emotionally that I thought, and this was my relationship blueprint. Once you're in it, all in. There's no one else. I don't even look at anyone else. I don't see anyone else because I just love that person. I just see them. I don't even have to stare at anyone. Although they could be in my periphery, I'm not looking at them.
There's no focus.
Just love them. And completely. And so it just blew my mind that there could be the step out emotionally to another person who I thought that was my person. That was my person, and that they could do that. And then So anyway, long story short, I had to really take a look at how I could have been responsible. And there's a few things that come up. First of all, it wasn't the one. There were many red flags before that happened that I had questioned. Why am I? If you have to question, why am I in this relationship? This doesn't feel good. It's, it's supposed to be easy. Like, love is not supposed to be war. It's supposed to be easy peasy lemon squeezy. Sure, you have your ups and downs, but you're gonna like have more ups than downs, not the other way around. And so that was a red flag. The second thing is questioning what I wear, like telling me that all those men looked at your tits when you walked in the garage. Like, that's like a red flag. Like, because no, they didn't. FYI, no, they didn't. But according to that person, they did. All these little things. So you shouldn't wear that lipstick. You should, you need to cover up. You need to become Muslim because clearly just wear this.
Yeah.
You're not being loyal to me and not, that control, that need to tell me about every little situation, that I'm not being the good little wifey or partner to that person. Those are red flags. Get the heck out. But I didn't do that. So I before the actual cheating happened, I had already cheated myself. I had already betrayed myself to the point where I just didn't know who I was because I kept letting all these little things slide and I didn't tell anyone. That's probably the biggest thing. You got to talk to people, especially the people that know, like, and trust you and that you have a connection with, like your family, because they will be able to say straight up. They might not give it to you in the way that you want to hear, but they'll give you the truth and they'll have your back regardless. And so I didn't tell my family, I didn't talk to anyone. I actually told no one what was going on. And the only one that saw that was my little person, my baby, which it impacted her. And it's also impacted her relationship blueprint, unfortunately. And so it's the most devastating thing that happens. It can be like, bring you to your knees. But in hindsight, there were times that I could have gotten out and left, and I did leave multiple times, but I never followed through because I just wanted to see if it would work. So I was willing to work it out as long as they did their work. I was willing to go the extra mile as long as they went the extra mile. And I was just always hoping that they would just, because I saw the potential, that they would just come to the party, do their work. Yeah, sure, I can be a witch as well. You can be a bastard, I can be a bitch. We got that, right? Let's get into the real nitty-gritty work, because at the end of the day, I want to build with you. I love you. There's no one else for me. All of that sort of stuff, which was another blueprint of my Nana's generation. You just do everything for them, cater to them, like that song, I want to cater to you, Destiny. Yeah. Brush your hair, do everything. So I was like stealing a bit from my Nana's generation, my mum and dad. I mean, they don't have, like, they have an up and down relationship. They love each other. It's the foundation. And what I found at the end of the day is my relationship blueprint's probably very different to those generations. And not to do that, not to copy anyone else, but come up with one that is healthy for me. So in closing with this whole cheating topic, I feel sorry for any family and anyone who has been cheated on. And also, I do feel sorry for the person who cheats, because they just don't know how to be vulnerable, how to tap into their emotions, and to allow themselves to share openly what's going on for them. It's really sad to feel the need to use your assets and or, you know, the thing in the middle of your private area to get connection. Because it's I'm laughing because, sorry, my explanation, I'm not laughing at people
at the topic.
that
No.
really does happen, that they feel that that's the most important connection rather than this one, and it's not, and it's sad. And they probably learnt how to connect, how to disconnect from the emotion, how to connect with their body in a way that you know, just brings so much sadness and can recreate and recycle trauma, because they weren't loved, or they felt rejected. Or I know in my instance there was a lot of childhood trauma, and that just played out as it does in a beautiful way. And I feel you know, sorry for that person, that I couldn't be the one to break the cycle for them and or for myself, that I just was like, nah, bitch, I'm out, like this is too hard. Sorry for swearing, whānau. I've been swearing quite a bit this episode, but you know, I feel like it's really important to have that healthy connection with yourself, so that when there's red flags come up, you're able to witness them for what they are, instead of the fairy tale that you believe that you're in, and act accordingly straight away, without leaving it to go on for days, weeks, months, years, and create even more of a traumatic experience for yourself, for your children, for your partner, for the other partners that you have, for the side chick or the side guy, that you just deal with that and then cut it off, you know, send love and then move on healthily. That is all. Thank you. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a biggie, and it is I guess at the heart of it, it's, you know, from that self-awareness of how am I, you know, basically what am I doing, what am I putting up with, does it align with me, am I abandoning myself and wanting to cater to this other person, you know, am I honoring myself, am I not honoring myself? It's all of those things. And as you say, it's, you know, I definitely resonate with what you said, that you were, you know, sort of taken bits from different blueprints, and I was definitely the same. Initially I've been, you know, reworking that blueprint, trying hard to rewrite that blueprint the past couple of years. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, if anything comes of that. You know, and yeah, it's just so interesting to look back with what I have learned now and go, yep, that was the red flag that I just willingly ignored.
Yeah.
You know,
turn a blind eye to.
Yeah, or even like the ones that I noticed but thought, no, you know, if I just keep, you know, giving, or we just keep trying, it's gonna, you know, it could work out. No.
It's actually funny you say that, because I was the same in terms of certificates. Those certificates on the wall, they're not something I'm proud of because they're a certificate. They're proud of because I lived, because there was a part there where I was suicidal, and you know, there was a part there where I was suicidal, and so was someone else in my family at the same time that this was all going on, and so they represent that I lived. And but yeah, it's really important to have that raw and real grunty conversation, the true honest, so honest that it hurts. But it's the most important conversation you'll ever have, because it will bring you out of bypassing and pretending and being with the lollipops and rainbows, and bring you straight back down to earth, to the physical plane. So then you can adapt and move and pivot from there.
Yeah, and I think that's, important to note too, is that, I mean, we're both very similar in that way. We'd rather have the brutal, honest truth than, the perceived kindness of a lie or a, untruth sort of thing. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think that's part of the confrontation, isn't it? It's like actually both people being willing to speak their truth in spite of how the other person may receive it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's one of the biggest I see as a warrior, as an unstoppable warrior, as a sovereign warrior, being sovereign to yourself in terms of, tino rangatiratanga. Is to be able to be willing to do that no matter what, without any attachment to the outcome.
Yeah,
regardless. That's pretty powerful.
Absolutely. Can definitely be a sticking point, that good old attachment to the outcome and letting go of your attachment to the outcome. But that's kind of where the magic is in terms of being free, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And a major sort of source of personal freedoms once you get to that point. It's like, it kind of ties into that whole, if you show up in the space as your authentic, unapologetic self, wherever that space is, and regardless of whoever is there, it's kind of for me, it's a continuation of that same conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So we don't want to get into attachment theory here. That's another podcast, but we just did want to touch on how your attachments and how you attach to things, and could be a narrative, a story, what your mama said, what your daddy said, what your mama didn't say, what your daddy did say or didn't say, and also even your grandparents, if they're a fundamental foundation of you growing up, any aunties, uncles, so that you can create a really or understand what's unhealthy, dysfunctional, what toxic. I don't like the word, but we use that.
Yeah, no, I get
such a common word.
It just gets bandied about so much, doesn't it? Without,
because I truly believe no one can be toxic. What it actually is their inability to be fully in their masculine or feminine, because there's lower levels, there's higher levels, and if you are perceived or are feeling toxic in the way you're relating and connecting to yourself and others, it's just because of that. And that's not toxic. That is just a lower level or a higher level of operating, embodying, and being and connecting. So awesome. Let's go to the next. Is that all?
Yeah,
they're covered. Awesome, Crystal. I just want to say also, I send so much love and compassion out to anyone who's going through any type of cheating or in the midst of that. It's not often talked about enough how painful it is, and it can take people to their knees, and it can be one of the greatest most painful times, and people can have all sorts of ways of coping and dealing, and suicidal, mental illness, drugs, alcohol, sex addiction, whatever. And that's not something to look at lightly. It's a really important topic, and it's something we may look at later on in the podcast, but just want to send love and compassion out to anyone who's dealing with that, going through a separation, because you may not know that you'll get through it right now. You may not feel like you might feel like the the world is crumbling around you as you see it and as you feel it, but I promise you, you will get through it. Guaranteed. We did. If we can do it, you can clearly do it. Yeah. So next one is, and I thought this would be good in terms of the whole lockdown, people being in lockdown, decreasing the ability to connect with people, because I'm sure lots of dating physically, lots of dating sites would have had less interaction, or that could have blown up, I don't know. But the actual connecting and going out to dinners and night clubbing and all that social aspect of connecting. So in terms of lockdown and being in lockdowns and lockouts, how is that important for connection?
I know for myself, when we went into lockdown last year, it actually made me take more of an initiative to reach out to people through, whether it was social media or whether it was video chats, I actually made more of an effort to reach out to some of my friends that I was physically distanced from, especially those in other countries that, and we had I had a great little sort of weekly catch-ups with some of them, especially ones that I felt that they, chair squeaking there, that, that felt more isolated within themselves. I've got a couple of friends back home that are freelancers, and so it was hard for them to get work through some of the lockdown periods. And it was just nice to actually be able to have a chat, see their face, and let them know that someone was actually thinking of them and all that sort of stuff, which is really so essentially having that connection through technology, which was it's kind of an oxymoron in some ways, but it just giving us not the same level of support, because you can't quite hug them or what have you, but you still can express the same emotion, emotional support to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the importance of that, so that they, because it's very easy for people that are physically isolated to start going into their head and just feeling alone.
Yeah. What it brought up for me was how much of a hermit I am, because I was like, this is normal for me, so I don't know what everyone's complaining about, because most of my work is online, like 99.9%. So for me, initially last year it was like, oh, this is just lovely, and I actually have to stay home. I'm not allowed to go out, so I'm going to get all my work done. But I guess as it's progressed and it's gone on the last year or two, I have particular compassion for Melbourne and now Sydney, and I feel like it's now more than ever, connection is so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't realize how important, and I guess it kind of, for me, it got me out of the hermit mode, or needing to get the idea of, okay, right, you've been in hermit mode long enough. You need to get out and see people outside of your screen. And so the idea of that has been really awesome to be willing to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, my empath side, we need some personal space on the regular, to try and maintain that balance. But then at the same time, I also, and sometimes I need to push myself out of my hermit ways to seek connection and, face to face. and I have gotten better at that, but because I also have that social side as well. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's almost like when a little bit of like when you're getting told to do something and part of you goes, don't tell me to do that, I'm going to do this.
Like,
you know, there's a little bit of push pull going on there. But yeah, I mean, like, while I know I need to make sure I take time for myself and have alone time, I also know I need to have that social interaction and connection with people in the real world as well.
I love that. Yeah, I'm a bit like, I love 80% my own space, and then probably more like, I'm pushing it, 10%, 20%. Like, I love seeing people when I go shopping. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I love you all. Yeah, so that's what I've noticed. I need to connect more with people. I think when you go through something quite traumatic, it takes a bit of time to heal, to deal with the triggers. And I used to get really, when I was in that unhealthy environment, triggered by just people in general, and CPTSD. It would happen anywhere, and it particularly would happen out in public. And I couldn't talk to anyone because I didn't know what it was, first of all, and I hadn't told anyone about what was going on and I was feeling inside. So I just had me, myself, and so that's not a very safe place to deal with all of that comes up. So after that, I just made the decision to isolate myself and just really focus on my healing through that now. So the next phase is, intentional connecting, not just willy-nilly, oh yeah, I'm just going to connect with Tom, Dick and Harry. So I'm looking for the group, the Rōpū. I think I found it, which is a Māori culture Rōpū, although I did almost slightly die after running.
With the Morako.
Yes, that was the experience. But I've just got a few things to do before I because once I commit, it's all in. So I think that's the avenue that I will be going down, because it's it's beautiful to have that connection, especially, I don't know, I just find with my people, our people, don't have to explain yourself. It's just boom. And we're already on the same plane, same dimension. There's just it's almost like I know them and they know me. Beautiful connection. Yeah. All right, the next part is communication.
Communication.
Communication. I think we've shared a bit about that, but
I mean, and just the fact that it needs to be good communication. It's that simple, even though it's a difficult topic and can be difficult to practice or in practice. But really, that's what it comes down to, isn't it? Good, clear, open, honest communication.
Yeah, well, there's lots of ways you can communicate. So there's this study they did, 7% words, about 30-something% tonality, and 56% is physical communication.
Body language.
Your body language.
Yeah.
And I believe unconsciously people were connecting and or communicating without actually saying anything, because the words is only 7%.
Yeah. And I mean, you can feel, I mean, I know for myself with one ex in particular, I worked out, I felt the change, and that's my, empath, energetic side, whatever label you want to put on it. I felt the change in our connection, before it was apparent, as in, or confirmed that he was stepping out, so to speak. But yeah, I just, and I think a lot of people, because you have that that intimacy with someone, whether you acknowledge that it's your intuition or whatever, giving you a heads up, you can feel when someone that their mood is off, or their actions aren't are out of their normal or or routine. It's just whether or not you want to bridge that topic and really know, or have
or be brave enough to face the truth.
Yeah. And also, I guess, whether where they are at in that too, and will they admit it, or will they try and turn it around and project or transfer blame onto you. All of that comes into play too, doesn't it, with communicating about those sorts of topics.
Yeah, absolutely. I was having an interesting conversation with my girl. We have some awesome conversations. She's 16, and I was sharing with her how it's important to have the conversation straight up. Otherwise, it can lead to people not knowing and understanding where they stand. There's a particular thing going on at school, which I'm not privy to share here in this podcast. But what I would say or share is that she, I guess as teenagers, they're not emotionally developed, or neither are adults, let's be honest. There's some that are very emotionally immature and all have tendencies to be at certain times in their lives with certain stresses. But needless to say, with teenagers, they don't know how to get across their point of view, or communicate to their friend, or whoever how they're feeling. In fact, it's seen as a weakness, and something that they shouldn't do, because then they're seen as vulnerable and then can get teased and bullied and all that sort of stuff, or made fun of. And so she hadn't had a conversation that she probably should have had or could have had, and she was just asking some advice from me. And it comes down to, and we spoke about this in the last podcast, and I did share how it depends on the connection, it depends on the person, it depends on the title or the label of the relationship. But there really, I believe there comes a point where in any connection that's important and meaningful, and there's been a bit of work, there's history there, that a conversation, that type of communication is needed to let people know where they're at or where you're at, and then there can either be progress through whatever everyone chooses or not. Does that make sense? I feel like I just walked around.
I
took you through the garden, the forest, and the trees, and then brought you back.
I don't know. I can't speak for the viewers, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
That's the main thing. Okay. So what I really meant is, it's easier to have that raw and real conversation, that type of communication with people that are close and meaningful to you and that you've got investment in. With other types of scenarios, I saw there was a post about someone who was blocked by someone else. And I guess in their eyes, they felt like they needed to have that communication. But sometimes we don't get, in a relationship when it breaks down, sometimes we're not going to get closure. Sometimes people are just going to ghost, and they're not going to tell you the reason why, and communicate that to you. Sometimes people just leave your life and you don't know why they do. And I've had many in the last 36 months. It's been hard, but it's also been necessary for them. And so I love them enough to let them go to do what they need to do. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is that understanding where you're at with how you connect with yourself will give you the greatest closure that you ever needed without needing to have a conversation with someone. If you're able to understand who you are, know and trust yourself, and detach from the outcome and not be too attached to well, they should have done this and they could have done blah, 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 all of that sort of belief system. That's where I stand with that.
Yeah, and I think part of that is knowing that, you know, a lot of what other people do has nothing to do with you.
Yeah, I should have just
screen.
High five. I should have said that. I would say that's like half an hour. See, sister.
No, but the explanation is good. You know, I mean, people pick up different things through it all. So, you know.
Yeah. So can you say that one again? I'm going to write that down.
That just, you know, a lot of the way people react has nothing to do with you, because they're acting out their trauma, their blueprints, their, you know, previous experiences, their previous wounds from previous relationships. You know, and it just gets messy.
Yes. And that brings me to another quote. What other people think of you is none of your business.
Hallelujah. Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. Yes. Awesome. So they're not the people you want to seek clarity from, are they? Because then you're never going to
it's a bit like, as you say, I mean, breakups in particular, when someone can be like, oh, but I just want to know what they think about that, and why didn't they just tell me this? And it's like, because I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest they actually can't tell you that or verbalize that, or they might not even know it themselves. They just, you know, have made the decision to get out of there. And I'm sorry it's not been in a way that you can, you know, process. But it kind of comes under that, you know, that nice blanket of sometimes it just is what it is. And you have and you have to come to find acceptance with, you know, what is, rather than what you would have hoped.
Yeah,
you know,
it is what it is.
And there's lots of different shade and colors and, you know, all of that through that. But yeah, I think as we touched on in the Boundaries podcast around ghosting, it's all part of that, isn't it? Sometimes you just will not get the perfect answer that will, you know, so that you can go, okay, stamp, that's dealt with. I can file that away. You know, don't have to look at that again.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's just largely unrealistic and part of some of the you know, tropes and fairy tales we get fed regarding relationships and how they start and how they are and then how they end. It's like humans just
that
don't
they shouldn't end.
Yeah.
Some of the blueprint is, well, we're supposed to be together for the rest of their lives. You're my soulmate, you're my twin flame.
Yeah, don't get me started on the whole soulmate thing. I just find that so overused, the whole soulmate term.
Yeah,
to me it just reeks of unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I think all of it. Yeah. You know? Like I understand where people are at with that, but whatever title or label you want to give it, it's really comes down to, is this adding value to my life? Am I feeling lifted up, uplifted, lifted up, fulfilled? Yeah. Am I feeling like I'm gaining energy from this experience and there's constant thoughts that keep happening, or is it just draining the living daylights out of me, and do I need to move on?
Absolutely. And I think, and within that, in terms of the journey, you know, generally back to self, and the connection to self is knowing that if we don't have that, if we're not the source of our own happiness, no one and nothing external is going to give us that. It might feel like they're giving that to us for whatever period of time, but ultimately, we can't be investing so much in someone else that we're not giving that same amount of focus and attention to ourselves, and vice versa. I guess the ultimate is two people dealing with, working on themselves, choosing to be together, and taking turns leading, supporting when needed, as part of that, working as a team or what have you, whatever, however you want to describe it, with that love, with that respect, with that trust, with that intimacy, with that communication. But that's a lot.
It's a lot, and it's work.
That's a lot. It is. It's not. I think that's also part of the fantasy we're sold, isn't it? That's like, oh, you meet, you fall in love, and everything's rainbow and unicorns. They actually don't mention relationships take work, because we're all still hopefully working on ourselves too. So of course there's going to have to be some crosstown traffic in terms of work with each other as well.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, absolutely. And once you get the person, I don't know where this comes from, I don't like that term that I just used, but get with the person or in the relationship of your dreams, it's like the honeymoon period only lasts like 4 to 6 months maybe, and then you see the truth of who that person is, and they also in turn see the truth of who you are or where you really are at. So don't
like
get caught up in the Disney fairy tale. Yeah, absolutely. You are getting activated with codes that you never knew were there. And you never knew you didn't want until you were receiving them. I'm just being cheeky. Yeah.
I'm hearing like in certain video games, it's like level complete.
Yeah, absolutely. So funny.
Next challenge starting in 5, 4.
Yeah, absolutely. So recommendations for communication. I know it's personal for everyone, but if you could just be, so I'm saying this, but they see my breath. Did you see my body just go?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I'm like,
you go,
I was
girl.
like, stop it! I'm talking. We're on a podcast, but my body is like, just,
say it.
Always. So as I was saying, but my body was saying something else. See the congruency or incongruency in that moment. My body wanted to speak on abuse, abusive relationships, domestic violence, which includes sexual, emotional, physical, and mental abuse. And sometimes emotional abuse is, oh gosh, don't get me started, sister. But it's one of the most painful ones because it's not seen. It's not something where you see. Emotional, mental. You don't see a bruise. You don't see a broken arm. You just, the person looks normal, and they can actually go into this overdrive of wanting to show and appear like everything is not only normal, but it's actually fully functioning, amazing life, showing all the wonderful Instagram posts or photos on Facebook or all social media, but yet behind closed doors, they're not themselves.
It's the complete opposite.
Fully in trauma, CPTSD, PTSD, and they can hide it really well. And so I was going to say, before my body witnessed to me, that it's important in the recommendation for communication is to have those raw, grunty conversations with someone that you know you need to have, or with people that you know you need to have, honest in terms of, even if it's uncomfy, even if you don't want to, even if they don't want to listen, because it's going to give them a healing on another level, and also you, that you've otherwise would not get. And the other part on that is with emotional, sexual, physical, or mental abuse. That's different. You don't need to have that conversation. In fact, get the help you need, get the support you need, get separate account, get the heck out as soon as you can, as long as you've got support. You need support. You need a coach or a healer or someone to help guide you through that, because it's going to be quite difficult. And then get the support you need in terms of healing. And in those situations, and in those situations only, I do not encourage communication. In fact, quite the opposite. I encourage block, Control Alt Delete, no contact, as quick as possible, and as quick as you're ready to be able to be willing to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Safety has to be paramount. And as you say, it definitely falls under those circumstances of, just self-preservation, and knowing that it's just not healthy for you to try and have those sorts of conversations with someone that is, essentially treating you in that way, because it's not going to be a positive interaction, and you might be putting yourself in more danger by trying to address what's been going on.
Yeah, I'll say what that little girl says in Forrest Gump: "Run, Forrest, run!" Like literally run.
Yeah.
As fast as you can, and or when you can. Some people don't have the ability to, but
yeah, I think the where the raw and real communication comes in those particular instances is actually, hopefully, the person that is needing to run has at least one person outside of that relationship that they can go to and have that raw and real conversation, and basically, say, I need help. That's where the open communication needs to come into, so that they can actually have assistance to get the hell out.
Yeah, and hopefully they have family that can support and help them, that are understanding, that
family, friends, whoever it is, whatever the connection, blood or not, hopefully they've got at least one person that is willing to stand with them and
that they can
help them get through that.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
sometimes families are not the safe place that
are part of the problem,
or the supportive place that person needs.
Yeah, I was going to say, unless they already have that cycle and they're part of the cycle, and the reason that person is in a relationship like that because of that blueprint, then they would not be the best people. Yeah, absolutely. But with I feel like we've honoured communication. Should we move on to the next one, which is honouring self? We've got honouring self, and then discernment, and then alignment. Let's speak on all those three all at once.
Yeah, I think they're very much all tied together, in terms of, honouring ourselves. We've said it before, who are we giving our time to? Are we discerning whether or not there's reciprocity in those connections? And if there is or there isn't, how is that honouring or dishonouring ourselves? And if we are, seeking to be in alignment, mind, body, soul, our actions, our words, our energy, all of it, then that informs, or should inform, our connections and and what we're giving and what we're accepting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a experience recently, or last year, or the last couple of years. I was, I had a person in my family who was like an in-law come into our family. Had so much, so many issues with that person. I didn't understand why. It went on for 10 years. But because they were the parent of my nieces and nephews, I just, there were times where I was like, you know what, I might have to just say goodbye to them. I love them and hope they come look for me when they're older, because to deal with that person was just so draining, and it crossed all my boundaries, and it was very out of nowhere. But in the last couple of years, that person over and over has come to me saying, I'm so sorry for those times, because I really didn't trust you, and I didn't realize that you were actually trying to help me. And it wasn't until that person, went back to New Zealand, had no support, had no one who would put up with that BS, because it was BS, that she learned to realize that we actually loved her. She cries all the time, and she wishes she could turn back time. She wants to come and connect when she moves back here. But for me, it was like, wow, because I never had the intention of, I'm going to just do this to see what I get out of it. It was always about, I just need to be there for those kids. I feel like I just need to run away with them, kidnap them, but I couldn't do that. That was their parent, and the sometimes we don't see and it's not like we are going to be there for someone for the payoff, but it's the actual consistency in who we are and offering that support that may not be today, may not be tomorrow, may not be this year or next year, but eventually someone will see the truth of who you really are and what you're offering, and may tell you later on down the track.
Yeah, it's so kind grateful. Of it's like planting those seeds in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also knowing that we can have the best of intentions wanting to help someone, but we can still only do so much. Yeah. And it's also having to accept that sometimes, no matter how much you want to help someone, they're just not at that point where they can take your help.
Yeah.
And finding a way to be okay with that, so you're not going, oh, but I keep trying, or but maybe this time they'll let me, they'll say yes to me helping, kind of thing. It's a whole juggling act within itself too, especially if you're inclined to be of service to people.
Yeah. And to overgive.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Absolutely. So honor yourself and honor your own boundaries and what you need and what you want, and what you're desiring in your life as well. Discernment. That's a great one.
Yeah, I think that's still all kind of wrapped up in what we've just said too, that sometimes part of those raw and real conversations, the ones you have to have with yourself and admit that, okay, I might, be giving all of this to someone, and they might be, lapping up the love, attention, energy that you're giving, but they're not reciprocating to that same level. And at what point do you go, oh, I'm actually, doing myself a disservice by continuing that connection?
Yeah.
And then you're having to decide whether you can adjust your, I don't know, perspective, expectations, desires for that to what it is versus what you would like, or is it actually in your better interest to cut that connection, and love them from afar, wish them well, but wish them away, kind of thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
And all the messy emotions that go with that.
Woohoo! It's a heck of a ride.
Welcome to the roller coaster. Yeah. Sometimes feels like a washing machine. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as you were speaking, discernment also with connecting, and the way in which you connect with yourself is a really important one. The way in which you connect with your story. I was thinking of, when you have a goal, say, I want to be the best singer. And you're not quite there yet for whatever reason. I'm talking about myself, but you have this goal. Well, what are you going to do to get to where you are now and where you want to be? It's going to take time, dedication, commitment, focus, discipline to get that goal. And in terms of discernment, it's really important to discern what you are doing with your time, with your sacred time. Are you scrolling? You just spend a whole hour or 2 hours on TikTok and YouTube and Facebook watching videos of people doing absolutely crazy things, or you actually utilizing that sacred time to invest in mastering that skill, practicing your vocals, taking care of your voice, watching Mariah Carey, whatever you need to do. And then also being honest with yourself in terms of aligning to and with people who may be in the field of singing, who may already have the school talent, who've been there, done that, and modeling them so that you can start doing a few things of what they do. You're not copying them, you're modeling them, to at least have the discipline to have what it takes to be a great singer. I think a lot of people think or are unaware, unconscious at some level, that their time is always going to be there. And they'll have plenty of time in the next 3 to 5 years to achieve whatever goals they have. And it's just not true, whānau. It's just not. Time is an illusion, and it's not guaranteed. So how you're connecting with yourself when this camera's off, and when you go back to your homes, and when no one else is watching, what are the things that you're doing to discern that connection? Is it self-gratifying, or is it self-expanding? Is it rebuilding your connections with your confidence, or your mastering yourself? Or are you discerning what time you give and your precious time to different activities? I think that's important as well. I would encourage, take it off the other person and put it into you. That's what I personally would do, because it's not until you do that this is for anyone, then you realize you're the greatest asset you'll ever have and need. And anyone would be just lucky to even have the notion or the chance to be in the area of, in the vicinity of your allure and your goddess graceful energy.
To be in your presence. I'm not worthy. There we go.
Exactly. They would just be like the path you walk. They'll be just so lucky to be around that.
And I know that probably borders on what feels like arrogance to some people, but at the end of the day, that's totally what it's about. You know, being so strong in your belief of who you are, the value you bring, the gifts you have. Also owning your flaws and your failings, and knowing that you've still got so much to learn and experience, but ultimately knowing that you're freaking worth it, and don't let any other mofo tell you you're not. Especially the voice in here that is really good at, you know, messing with hair.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay humble, whānau, with your gorgeousness. Stay humble.
No, I think there's times.
But we know you got
places.
it. Yeah. You have to be the greatest fan of yourself, because no one else is going to be. Or they might, but you have to be first. Self-belief.
I would phrase it more in that whole notion of, you know, the way we love ourselves teaches others how to love us.
Oh, you and your little catchphrases. I love it. Say it again for the people.
No, you're just going to have to rewind the video. I'm sorry. No.
The way you love, like how you love yourself, other people.
Teaches other people how to love us.
You do. You teach people how to love you. And that's why in your relationship, your brand spanking new relationship, any red flags, bring them up. We're taught to not say anything, to be submissive, to surrender. And that's a whole bunch of baloney. When you see something, speak on it, because then the unsaid is said, and then you're able to express it and deal with it and then move forward. And if someone just want to talk about a red flag, then they're probably...
That's a red flag in itself.
Probably living in denial and don't want to face. And that's usually the small things early on in the relationship. So when the big things happen, that's when you really want people to honor and speak on those. Alrighty, I feel like we're finished.
I think that's a good place to call time on that. Yeah.
Yeah, so in closing, your healthy connections, your unhealthy connections, and the way in which you connect to self, all points back at you. Me, myself, and I. Yeah. Awesome, everybody. I'll let Jan close this out. Thank you for joining us, and we would love to have your comments, your concerns. Can be quite concerning. Apologies for the swearing. I actually just got so in the groove. I was talking to my girlfriend, my sister.
It's all passion. Right. It's just passion.
Yeah, it's passion. But thank you. We'll see you next time on our next.
Thank you, everyone.
Episode. Any closing words, sister? With you, have you got another catchphrase for us?
No, I think I'm catchphrased out right now.
All right, awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. You can heal your life. That was Louise. Hey, I got there. Take care. We'll see you next episode. Love yourself enough to say yes, and also love yourself enough to say, I do not consent. Sacred no. Bye, everyone.
Ka kite.
Ka kite.